Have you ever been there? You're in a relationship, doing everything you think you're supposed to do to bring someone closer. But somehow, you just wind up feeling more alone than ever. If you've ever felt like you're somehow sabotaging the very love you want so badly, then you are in exactly the right place. Let's get into it.
Wow. That right there, that feeling is just so common. It's this really painful cycle, right? You try so hard for that connection, but your own actions, the ones that come from this deep place of fear, seem to be the very things that push it away. It's like this awful self-fulfilling prophecy that can leave you feeling completely hopeless.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to break this whole thing down. First, we'll look at the cycle itself. Then, we'll dig into where it even comes from. After that, we'll pinpoint 5 specific ways we end up sabotaging ourselves. And then, the most important part, we'll talk about the path to healing.
So, what is this anxious attachment cycle?
Well, at its core, it's really a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have this deep fear of being abandoned, so you do things to try and stop that from happening. But here's the irony. Those very actions, like asking, "Are you mad at me?" over and over until your partner actually gets annoyed, they end up creating the exact distance you were so terrified of in the first place.
All right, so where in the world does a pattern like this even start? And let me just say, right off the bat, it is not because you're broken or unlovable, not at all. It actually goes way back to our very first experiences with connection. And figuring out that why, well, that is the absolute first and most crucial step to changing things.
Yeah, this all comes back to something called attachment theory. The basic idea is that the way we bonded with our primary caregivers when we were little created a kind of blueprint, a map for how we do relationships as adults. And just to be super clear, this isn't about blaming our parents. It's about understanding the rule book we were given for how to feel safe and loved.
I love this way of thinking about it. Your childhood was basically a classroom. It's where you learned all your first lessons about what love is. And if that love or that attention felt kind of unpredictable, sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't, well, the lesson you learn is that connection isn't reliable, and you have to work really hard, or even put on a performance to make sure it doesn't disappear.
And you know what? This fear can pop up even if you had the most wonderful, loving parents. For a little kid, just the perception of inconsistency, maybe a parent is stressed or busy, that can be enough for that subconscious fear of being left behind to really take hold. And that fear, it just follows you into every relationship you have later on.
So to deal with that fear as a kid, you get really smart. You develop these survival skills. You become an expert at reading the room, you're the family peacemaker, you make people laugh, you learn to push your own needs down so you're never seen as needy or too much. But here's the catch. What worked to help you survive as a kid ends up sabotaging you as an adult.
Okay, so let's get specific. How exactly do those childhood survival skills turn into adult relationship sabotages? We're about to break down the 5 most common ways this happens. And just recognizing these patterns in yourself, that's where the power to change them begins. All right, let's jump in. And as we go through these, just see if any of them ring a bell. And remember, no judgment here.
Sabotage number 1, people-pleasing. We think if we just put our partner's needs, their wants, their happiness before our own, we're locking in that connection. But it actually does the exact opposite. Because if you're not showing up as your real self, then real connection can't happen. It's like you abandon yourself, hoping they won't do the same to you.
And this is why setting boundaries feels so terrifying for a people pleaser. We think it's going to push people away. But think of boundaries less like walls and more like guardrails on a bridge. They're what make it feel safe to cross. And here's the secret. The right person won't run away from your boundaries. They'll respect them.
Okay, sabotage number 2 is clinginess. And this really comes from being on high alert all the time. You're constantly scanning your partner, scanning the relationship for any tiny little sign that something's off. A text message that takes a little too long to come back? A slight change in their tone of voice? To you, it feels like the sky is about to fall.
And this kicks off a really nasty cycle. First, you sense some distance, real or imagined, and it triggers total panic. So you overreact, trying to close that gap, maybe sending a bunch of texts or calling again and again. Then the shame hits. You feel awful about how you acted, so you swing right back into people-pleasing mode to try and earn back their love. And just like that, the whole pattern starts all over again.
Now this next one, this one can be a really tough pill to swallow. Sabotage number 3 is choosing unavailable partners. Our brains subconsciously seek out people who are emotionally unavailable or avoidant, because honestly, that feeling of uncertainty feels familiar. It feels like home. A partner who is secure and available might actually feel boring, because your nervous system is wired for the chaos of a roller coaster, not the calm of solid ground. All right, number 4 is a big one. Avoiding conflict. We tend to see any kind of argument or disagreement as a direct threat, like this could be the end of the relationship. But the truth, the real danger is avoiding those tough conversations. That's what actually creates the disconnection. Because when you can't be real with each other, resentment just builds up and the intimacy just fades away. And that brings us to the 5th and final sabotage. Staying in a relationship for way, way too long. The fear of being alone can be so powerful that we just stop asking ourselves the really important questions. Questions like, do I even like this person? Do I feel safe to be myself? Am I actually happy? We get so wrapped up in making sure we're chosen. We forget that we're supposed to be choosing too. And we end up accepting feeling lonely with someone just because we think it's better than being on our own. Okay, wow. So we've laid out the problems, we've identified the sabotages, but just knowing about them isn't enough, right? So here's the really good news. There is absolutely a path forward. There is a way to heal. And it all starts when you shift your focus away from trying to manage your partner's feelings and toward building up your own sense of worth. So what does that look like? Let's build your healing toolkit right now. Step 1, start connecting with what you are actually feeling and what you actually need. Step 2, practice saying no, even with small things. It's a muscle. Step 3, dare to share your authentic self, even when it feels scary. Step 4, take accountability for your side of the street. And finally, number 5, start learning to trust your gut again. And I need to be crystal clear on this point. Taking accountability for your own patterns is not victim blaming. It is not saying it's your fault that you are mistreated. This has nothing to do with what other people have done to you. This is about empowerment. It's about you taking back your power by focusing on what you can control so that you can build a totally different and much healthier future for yourself. So, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. We pour so much energy into avoiding being alone, right? But what if you could find more joy, more peace in being by yourself than you do in feeling constantly neglected with the wrong person? Just think about that. What in your life would change if you really, truly believed that?